welcome everybody to the Fantasy Golf Insider webcast and podcast. I'm Jeff Bergerson, joined as always by my partner, Zach Turcotte. We're with FantasyGolfInsider.com, your home for everything fantasy golf and specializing in daily fantasy golf. If you haven't checked us out and aren't a premium member, why don't you go ahead and do that right now? You can get in for as little as about $15 a month for PGA coverage. We got tons of tools on there. We got a model, several columns each week, tons of research materials. Podcasts. You know, we got just about everything that you need to be successful playing.
Yeah, we really tried to upgrade this year, and so for folks who just handicap and bet on individual golfers every week, we've got you covered. We got the best in the business. So.
Yep, absolutely. This broadcast is available in podcast form on iTunes and Stitcher. So if you just want to listen to us, go ahead and do that. But do give us a good review on there. That helps us quite a bit. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel so you know exactly when our video comes out each week. Zachary, this week is our first week with the European Tour back.
Oh boy.
So if you are not a European member, go ahead and subscribe to that package on our site because that's kind of a lot of fun. You get early morning golf if you're up during those hours.
It's kind of a fun event this week. Headed back out to South Africa. Rory is going to go down there.
Great.
He's going to return a favor to Ernie Els, who came up and played in the Irish Open a couple of years back. So, yeah, anytime you get Rory into the field, that always makes it a little more exciting.
Absolutely. So go ahead and do that. And the first PGA event is in the books.
Yeah.
That was pretty exciting, huh?
It was pretty good. I had a lot of Jordan Spieth, so was kind of banging my head against the desk over what could have been. It really just came down to him of a couple terrible holes. I mean, a triple bogey here, a couple of double bogeys, and that was it. And he played spectacular. I knew after the first round to get ready for a firestorm within the next couple days.
Right.
He wasn't going to finish near the back of the pack. He's too good. He's too good on this course. So him coming up and coming alive, that helped out a lot. I had him, Hideki, and Pat Perez all on my cash game team for the week for my primary team, which 2-3-4 right there. You're pretty well. Actually, I think it was 2-3-3. I think Perez actually tied for third. Yep. Pat Perez is back.
He's hot.
So that
flowing locks.
That ended up working out pretty well. Did not have quite enough of Justin Thomas, and that wasn't so much that I didn't like him.
He was an odd price.
The 8,900 made him tricky to end up rostering. If you try to get two of the studs in at the top, you definitely weren't going to get them in.
No.
And I like Patrick Reed a lot as well, who finished pretty well within the event. So,
and Jimmy Walker.
All those guys were right around that area, so it was tricky to pay up for Thomas at 8,900, but I mean, maybe Thomas is just becoming a next-level talent now. I wasn't so sure last year that he would evolve, but over the last few events that we've seen him in, he sure has elevated his game.
Seems to excel in the smaller field events.
Yeah, small field, no cut types of events. He's got 3 wins now. So, yeah, it was a pretty good event. Fun to get things kind of back into the mix again. It was a little disappointed yesterday that they started so early out there. I was looking forward to being able to flip over after 4 just miserable football games this weekend. That was the worst wild card weekend of my life?
I think so.
But I was really looking forward to being able to flip over after that Packers.
That's what happened last year.
Game.
I remember after the last playoff game, I switched over, saw I think Jordan Spieth's back 9 in his route to the win, and I was looking forward to that too. But yeah, they started both Saturday and Sunday really early, so they were over before the football games were over.
Crazy, because we should have had at least 2 hours of golf on the back end to get me through my first Sunday night without being able to flip over to NBC.
Don't you think someone at the PGA...
I don't think the PGA thinks
just
anything
oblivious to
over there. I mean, even middle of the afternoon, I'm hunting around. I'm trying to find coverage. You know, I'm checking my phone app. I'm checking everything that I can. I'm trying to find... And so I actually went on a pretty good Twitter rant yesterday for about a half hour of things I would rather watch than the fucking pregame golf show on the Golf Channel.
With Frank Nobilo and Nota Begay and oh my God.
Yeah, it's terrible. So I just flipped around and around, and football came back before. I mean, they can't even start coverage on the app ahead of time for some reason. So that's going to be frustrating. I'm sure it's going to make me angry all season long, just as it has for many years.
It just doesn't
as a
make
golf fan.
sense. They have to know that people are watching the NFL in the United States, right? They just have to know that. So just adjust. It wouldn't have taken that much. You don't need to end. What time did it end in Hawaii? 2 o'clock?
2 in the afternoon.
Right. So why, I don't understand why you can't just push it back a few hours, have it end like it always ends.
It would make them a lot more money.
Absolutely.
They'd have,
Do you want viewers?
The eyes would go like this, because only the diehard fantasy golf fans are really tuning in.
And even I was switching back and forth.
Yeah, I was going back and forth.
I wasn't watching a commercial, I'll tell you that.
No, because it was our first Sunday without Red Zone, so it was a long Sunday for me.
But I mean, during golf and football, I would always just switch in between.
For sure.
Not watch, so.
Sad.
Whatever,
Disappointed. PGA.
Wake up.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're watching.
As always. That'll be the time when we stop tweeting about this. When we're actually big enough so that the PGA actually does tune in, that's when we'll just get on board and go with whatever they want to do.
Yeah. They'll start listening when DraftKings listens.
Oh, that's a race. That'll be a good race.
Hey, the contests are a little bit bigger this week.
They're so fearful.
Inching up.
They're so fearful that they may have to put in like $50 or $100
of overlay. There's not going to be an overlay. There were like 4 birdie contests last week. It hasn't
even been close.
No, they filled like, what was it? A day ahead.
Oh yeah, way out. And when the fields are this solid, like last week, obviously the Tournament of Champions, you get a lot of big names. This week for the Sony, again, you can anticipate this. I mean, one thing that confuses me is they always, as soon as the event tees off, immediately within like an hour or so, they post like the next week's events.
Right.
Why not wait a day until you get the field who declares and you can see just how stacked or how talented or not talented the field is?
Yep.
And then kind of make your contest based around that. I mean, this is really the last legitimate week anybody can play in football contests. There will be a few people just trying to squeeze every last drop out of the championship games, but still, this is the last week you can really get in there with cash games, 50-50s, and good-sized tournaments. So I know that they're still thinking about that. But again, we go through this year after year.
But if you're filling contests a day ahead, and then multiple contests after that, just increase it significantly. Give us $100,000 prize for the $3 birdie, please.
That would be great.
So.
I think they would do it, and I think at this time of year it starts to become sustainable. Obviously, in the fall season, it's not.
Right.
The rest of the year, pretty much, we're getting to a dry spot in terms of sports.
Twitter was buzzing too. They want bigger contests.
We kind of helped create a little.
Well, we did.
We're getting enough followers now so that people do like to pipe up and express their frustration, which kind of is fun for us.
Absolutely. So this week we have the first full field event, and with a cut, we're back to the cut sweats on Friday of the new year at Wailea Country Club in Hawaii, different island, Oahu. It's on instead of Maui. Mm-hmm. It is 7,044 yards, so shorter course, par 70. Do you know how many years they have hosted a PGA event here? A little trivia.
I did the research. I mean, they've been hosting. They've been hosting since back into like the 20s or something crazy like that. Is when
they've actually hosted a PGA Tour event 52 years now.
That's pretty
consecutive. Good. So there are 22 guys making the island hop over. I would say that's somewhat significant. I mean, guys are over there. They're putting on the same style of greens, same weather, wind. Not as much adjustment. Yeah,
it's nice in that last week there wasn't a lot of wind. I mean, there was enough to make a little bit of a difference, but not dramatically, although it was funny. Bubba still sucked either way.
Jeez. I'm not sure what to do with Bubba this year.
Yeah, I know he's using a new ball, so that's I don't know how much at that level. I mean, it seems like any minor tinkering at that level can kind of throw guys off, and we always know that it doesn't really take anything to throw Bubba off.
No.
You could tell Bubba it's a different ball that he's got out on the tee, and it would throw Bubba off. So, that's interesting. But the weather, not as bad as it could be last week. And this week, the main defense that this course tends to have is when it gets windy, because we've got the narrower fairways out there, so the bigger hitters can really struggle if the winds pick up.
Yep.
But we're not expecting much so far. Obviously, weather can change at the drop of a hat. You have to check that out on Wednesday night. But as of now, the first check of the week that I did, winds looking at like 4 to 6 miles an hour from Thursday through Sunday. sun pretty much throughout. I didn't see any rain in the forecast, so it looks like it should be pristine conditions on the course. Yeah, absolutely.
Last year, we heard a lot of buzz, well, not a lot, but a few people buzzing that tournament history has no impact in future results, of which we haven't heard much from those people in a long time. But this is one of those weeks where you'd use for the argument, yes, it does, because you see a lot of names do really good here year after year. One of those, just perfect example is Jerry Kelly. I mean, how often does he take top 10s, yet he has 3 consecutive top 10s here? So it's not like...
It is weird, though, that when you think about, okay, narrower fairways and guys having issues, and then the most recent back-to-back winner of Jimmy Walker, that wouldn't be the first name that would jump off.
It's something in the air for Jimmy. It's the umbrellas and the drinks, he says.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but he's also had a very nice history here overall. But it does tend to be a similar style of player. Accuracy comes into effect a lot this week, hitting greens. These are smaller greens, so it's going to be tougher to hit greens. Putting, we talk about week after week. And then as far as the par 4 holes are concerned, these are going to be on the tougher side. Some of the things I were reading were comparing them to U.S. Open quality par 4s. I'm not sure that is an accurate comparison, considering the fact that I think Fabian Gomez was -20 in winning here last year.
He'd do that at the
US Open.
But
let's just say that the par 4s are on the slightly more challenging side overall.
Yeah, you mentioned Gomez. He won it last year, of course, beating Snedeker in the playoff. That was pretty exciting. That was later at night. You remember watching that?
I do remember watching that, and he was one of the many. He was the first of many players last year that just popped out of the middle of nowhere and went on to win an event. Anybody who was trying to handicap stuff like that last year.
Well, he just stormed back in the final round, though. I think he picked up like 8 strokes or something crazy like that. He was insane.
But it is interesting because typically we don't get fields that are quite this top heavy. You normally would not see a Jordan Spieth. Hideki has actually played here before. I'm very interested in seeing what happens with Hideki this week because he's never made the cut here.
No.
Of course, he's been playing here since he was like 18 or 19 years old.
Bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like Hideki's been around forever.
It does.
It just feels kind of timeless. But yeah, going back, his first appearance here was actually back in 2011. So it's going back 6 years. I believe he would have been 18 when he played here for the first time.
So do you side with current form or you side with tournament history?
I'm probably going to side with current form. I think I probably will take some shares of Hideki this week.
Yeah.
Just because of that, actually, because I think most of the guys who are just kind of novices who are going to take a look at the tournament history, they're going to be shocked when they see Hideki is not made it in, if you look back, he's only really had one appearance here in the last 3 years.
Right.
I mean, Hideki, I look at his career, really the last 3 years is when he was most established. He's really only missed kind of that last cut. And given how good his form has been, and just what an amazing ball striker he is overall, I don't see where this course is really challenging other than the fact that, Hideki still can't putt, as we witnessed over the weekend.
Sunday, oh my gosh. If he could have made any of those putts, I was just dying because I had about 80% exposure to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if he makes one of those putts, everything's going off to the right, drifting.
Yeah,
couldn't make the adjustment.
He didn't look confident.
No.
He just didn't have it, which is unfortunate because Thomas did his best to give him an
He
opening.
pulled within 1 stroke.
And then just slammed the door on him on 17, which was great for Thomas. But
man, did he stick that approach shot. Oh.
On 17, too.
That was cold-blooded.
It's like a 520-yard par 4.
Yep.
So to birdie that thing that's always impressive. But
yeah,
I think it'll be interesting also to see where Jordan Spieth ends up this week. It looked like he had a couple mistakes in the first couple rounds. Beyond that,
triple and 2 doubles, right?
And that's it right there. You take those 3 holes away, there's your tournament winner.
Yeah.
I like him this week.
For sure.
He seems last week is sort of a knock the rust off after 3-4 weeks of being away from things. I think he gets locked in this week. I think we probably see something big out of him. Although for the price and for the field, it does get a little bit tricky.
There's a lot of options.
Yeah.
So I don't think that there's going to be...
There's not one clear-cut method this week.
No, well, there's not going to be huge ownership on any couple of guys, I don't think, and especially up top, because you got Walker obviously up top. You got Thomas.
Hideki's would be a little compressed with the cut history.
Yep.
Yeah, so
It will be. But then you look in that 8K range.
Sure.
There's a lot of guys you could easily see winning this tournament.
So for your philosophy this week, I think the first roster I usually make is kind of a cash game roster. Balanced seemed to be the way to go. Just a balanced lineup. You can start in the 7K range. There's a couple guys in around 7K. You go up into the 9s or lower 9s, and I had a very nice looking roster just by using a balanced method as opposed to last week where I was stars and scrubs, just kind of hoping that a couple of guys in the 6K range could do something for me. So I think balanced method will be the way that most people will go on. For GPPs, are you looking to get a little more in the stars and scrubs, or is this an event where anybody can win, so you maybe do get a little bit more balanced?
Well, I am going to have shares of both Spieth and Matsuyama. I don't know that it's going to be 100% stars and scrubs. I'm not going to stack probably two guys because I like too many guys in that 7 and 8K range.
Absolutely.
So if I mix in, I was running some rosters today. Hideki, you can get a couple of solid guys in that 8K range. I like Scott Piercy in that range.
Piercy,
I like Daniel Berger in that range.
Your favorite golfer?
I never am really on him at the right time. I just think his price got depressed a little bit. Yeah. People were disappointed last week.
I like Paul Casey.
I know you like Paul Casey.
We were talking about that before.
Is he a cash game guy for you?
I think so.
Okay, so he's the top end of your cash game. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of where it cuts off right there. But I was able to fit him onto a roster without much problem. He played great last year. He is the sort of guy that we're looking for here. Ball striker, pretty decent putter. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable with his game on this course.
Okay. Dropping down into the lower 8s, there's some more decent names. Billy Horschel at 8K. Did he stand out to you?
I like him too.
Yeah.
He had an interesting season last year. He kind of stepped back a little bit. It didn't seem like he played as much. It's like, where's Billy? Oh, he's off for the 4th or 5th week in a row. But when he did play, he was actually pretty good for the most part. He was pretty consistent.
Made a lot of cuts.
A great cut maker. Yeah. So for the price, I think he's got a lot of... I'll probably end up using him a lot in cash, and I'll probably be sprinkling him in GPPs because I know he's got that upside. I think his game fits the course pretty well.
If you're into the contrarian approach, it might make you sick to your stomach this week, but a couple of names for you.
Oh, boy.
Siwoo Kim.
Yeah.
And Brendan Grace. There's going to be mass exodus off those two guys. They've been in Hawaii. They played pretty much as bad as they possibly can play, right? Wow, I don't think either one can play any worse than they did.
Terrible. I mean, it's just horrible.
It's not a bad contrarian approach in GPPs. Obviously not cash because too much uncertainty. Grace was hideous on the greens.
At some point last season, Grace went from being a guy that you could really count on with the putter to terrible. I mean, just terrible. I mean, Charles Barkley over here a little bit. But he was bad. He was really bad again last week.
Yes.
It's becoming a little bit of a trend now.
Yes.
Obviously, I like him better at this type of a course.
Yeah.
7,000 yards, you get a par 70. That tends to be the type of course.
Well, yeah, you said smaller, narrower fairways, smaller greens. He won at RBC Heritage at Harbortown. Very, much
similar type
course.
of course.
Yeah.
It'd probably be a pretty good comparison course for him. So if he's going to roar back, this would be a great place for him to do it. His ownership is probably going to be in the low to mid single digits. I think he's probably 5 to 7%.
Yeah, I would
somewhere
say
in that range.
Yep, under 10.
We'll still be on him. And Siwoo Kim, I don't think his will be quite as low because he did play well here last year.
He did.
He was 4th place, I believe, last season. So he might get a little bit more benefit of the doubt, although it was really shockingly bad. I think I was very disappointed. You had a bit of a premonition when we were talking here last week. You were looking at his approach numbers, and you just kept saying over and over, God, his approach numbers are awful.
I know.
And I think you wanted to fade him. You really wanted to get away from him.
I did, but I was conflicted because I like him this year.
I know.
And it's hard to just say, no, I'm going to go away from him this week, even though I really like him. Because then if he does well, you're just like, oh, well, shit. No, where's my chance?
You don't want to be off him the week that he does really well.
Exactly. But I'm not jumping off the Siwoo Kim bandwagon for the year as a whole. This week, I'm going to have some shares because I think it will be a contrarian approach. and his price is right. Am I confident that he's going to come out and light it up? No, not as much. But he's worth a shot. And there's also some great talent around him, too. I mean, Kevin Na at $7,700.
That's as cheap as you probably
Crazy.
get Kevin Na, unless it's a major, then they just
Right.
criminally underprice him.
Yep.
If it's like the Masters or something like that, then he gets down to $6,800, $6,600 in that range. But yeah, there are a whole slew of guys here. Pat Perez this week again.
Guy's hot. How can you go away from him?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all the time off last year must have made him hungry because he looked fantastic again. And that's
looking at his body shape, I don't know how hungry he could probably be. He hasn't missed any meals.
No, it's a good point. It's bulking up, putting on a little bit of extra muscle for the course. But
he's going to be a popular choice this week, I think.
I think so. He's got a pretty good track record here in terms of having some results. And what I'm doing with him is I'm just discarding everything for result-wise in 2016.
I think that's
right. I think the injuries weighed him down until he finally had to move on. So all those miscuts that he packed up at the beginning of last season, I'll probably just end up disregarding those a little bit. Dropping down a little lower, our favorite cut streak is still alive there with Hudson Swafford. The guy can't get any respect here no matter what he does, but I think his game sets up great. He's another guy I think it could be in line for a breakout season. You know, his problem typically is that he makes the cut and then Saturday, Sunday rolls around and he just kind of makes his way back in the field a little bit. But I mean, he's priced, I believe, at $7,000 this week.
Yes.
Which is, I think, an absolute steal. Again, a very solid ball striker. The guy can putt. The big thing for him is always just avoiding the big blow-up holes along the way. But he's had a couple solid finishes here over the last couple years. That's a guy that I really love in terms of value. Charles Howell III, everybody's favorite guy. He will also be very, very highly owned.
His tournament history is crazy good.
Lights out. So another guy that you can go back to. Is there anybody down in the, say, in the upper 6,000 range? I know there was one guy that caught both of our eyes a little bit for being, I would say, almost criminally underpriced.
And it's too bad because I really don't like him all that much.
I know you don't. He's not your favorite player.
No, one of the better putters in the field.
Sure. Stand out.
Webb Simpson is $6,800. You know, for that price, it doesn't seem right. When you look at our sportsbook odds versus daily pricing, DraftKings pricing, there's a big discrepancy. It's a plus 35 for Webb Simpson, which is very high. And, you know, I don't love him, but he does make cuts. And for those of you who are new to daily fantasy golf with a cut, or those of you who just need a reminder, it is damn hard to get 6 guys through.
And last year especially. I mean, 2 years ago it didn't seem as bad. Last year, though,
it was
hard. Most weeks in the bigger events, it was maybe 5% of rosters were getting 6 of 6 through.
Right.
Cash games, if you got 5 of 6, you were gold. You were going to cash pretty much every week with that. Whereas a few years ago, I remember a couple times that I didn't even cash with 6 of 6. So it's definitely, the dynamic has definitely changed as the pricing has changed over the last couple of seasons.
And there's no one in the 5K range now, so you're going to have more of a balanced approach. Now, if you're targeting guys, let's say cut makers, Hudson Swafford, CH3, Billy Horschel, Webb Simpson, Harris English, another cut maker.
Duffner's in the field.
Duffner, yeah. Not all of those guys are going to give you top finishes, but most likely they're going to make the cut.
Yeah, and a lot of them will at least have the potential in their games to really do that. So,
but that's how I would differentiate your cash games from your GPPs. Then you got some GPP plays, like I mentioned, Kim and Grace, Contrarian. There's a couple other guys down here, Bryson DeChambeau. That guy's a GPP play for me.
Absolutely.
Because I will be playing him. He's just got so much talent, and at some point, this guy's going to erupt.
And he was pretty good at the Heritage last year, so it's not like he can't play this style of course. He's just a guy who's off and on. You're never really sure what his game's going to bring.
Could be top 5, could be miscut.
Once he gets through the cut, he tends to be dangerous. And he kind of relaxes a little bit, plays his game. It's just those Friday afternoons, you're always going to be nervous whenever he's on your roster.
If you had to pick one to have a more successful career, would it be Bryson or Ollie? Ollie Schneider-Jans.
I'm gonna go with Bryson.
I would too.
His game seems to be more sound. I think you can see with him the talent level that's there, and he's shown it throughout his college career, so that he could just be going through a little bit of growing pains here in his first couple of years. Whereas Ollie, we've seen flashes, but Ollie's just been kind of all over the place.
Right.
So I'm not sure with Ollie just how successful he'll end up being. I think Ollie could maybe be a guy who hangs around the tour for a while. I'm just putting my stamp of victory on Ollie Schneider-Jans right now. I think Ollie's a guy who kind of hangs around the tour, maybe gets a win here or there. Whereas I think Bryson could sharpen up his game and go on to
the world top 25, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's a guy who could win a major at some point in his career. I don't see that for Ollie. Sorry, Ollie.
I'm sure he's watching as well. Really disappointed.
So sorry. How about Jerry Kelly down there in the 6K range? Can he
keep doing it?
Is he going to keep posting top 10s?
I don't know.
Oh, what?
I would say no.
Are you on him?
I'm just not really. I might have a small waiting on Jerry Kelly. He won't be in my core though.
You are a Jerry Kelly fade.
Week. I can't say a complete fade because I haven't decided yet. We film this early in the week, so we don't lock in. That's why you need to subscribe to our website, because later in the week you decide, you hear the buzz around the industry. If there's a lot of buzz around a guy like Jerry Kelly, if I think he's going to be owned by 20%, 25% of the field, then I'm going to fade him.
It's tough this early, and we were just discussing that off camera before we started the show. I mean, prices came out about 5 hours ago, so
it is tough.
We get very little time. This is really our first impression. So what typically happens with our process is we cut the show. I'll go on with Jeff Feinberg. We'll discuss all of the folks that are in the field this week and pick 6 that we like enough to put some backing to for some wagers there. Jeff and I will then sit down, we'll craft our ownership numbers, start discussing some of the things that we're seeing or not seeing. But really, it's not all the way till I sit down on Tuesday night, late Tuesday night, to write my daily spin column that I finally feel comfortable with the guys that I'm going to write up for the week. Whereas football, those lazy bastards, they get to lay around on Monday. The prices are out Sunday night, so they get to see the prices a day early. And then Monday, they're just kind of laying around. They watch the Monday night game, it's sort of taking it a little bit. Tuesday, they're still assessing the damage from the previous weekend. And Wednesday, they finally can start to tune in and see what the injury reports are looking like. Thursday, they can start putting together a little bit of a positional analysis. Friday, start thinking about locking things in. Saturday, finally make some decisions on who's going to be out there. But for us, it's a little bit on the compressed side. So definitely important with this webcast. It's going to give you a decent primer, give you a pretty good base, but it's really important with golf to stick with it. Do a second weather check, tune into a couple of periscopes that we've got, read the articles that we continue to put out throughout the week.
I send out the update email late on Wednesday night to give you the best forecast, any last minute stuff that I've heard last week. It was Patrick Reed was a little bit sick.
Oh boy.
And I explained in the email that I'm not going to change my position dramatically because we all of us really like Patrick Reed.
And I didn't at all.
So I think I moved down my exposure a tiny bit in GPPs just in case, but we didn't say to get off them. It's just our job to inform you of everything. The last thing I would ever want is someone to come to us and say, you never told us this or you never told us that. So I like to give you the information and then have you decide. I'll give you my opinion. And I said, maybe move your exposure down a little bit in GPPs. But if you liked them before, the information wasn't strong enough. And we've seen it before when guys say they're sick. It can go either way. A guy can come out and kill it or they can just die, So either way.
It's pretty rare that anybody makes a huge shift in their lineups last second in golf based on information like that.
The one that really stands out to me was last year with Jason Day at the
Farmers.
He clearly was sick.
And he's a bit of a patsy. He's a little bit soft.
You can factor that in
so,
too.
I think that's the big thing when you evaluate these injuries. Who is the one saying they're sick? Because Jason Day he's always ailing in some way, some injury, illness. he's got something that he's going to let you know about it ahead of time. So that if things go bad, like, oh, well, he was sick. I mean, he actually came out the Farmers and he looked pretty good initially, and then just kind of faded after that, which sucked for the folks who hung out and continued to own him there. So it's tricky information. I would also balance it with what is the injury, or what is, if it's if it's an illness, I don't tend to worry as much about those. If it's well, he was out yesterday and he pulled a muscle in his back. That's
a little more concerning.
That's the kind of injury that I do tend to worry about a little bit more than others. So you have to really consider what it is and who the player is when you're making that type of a decision.
Okay, so that's enough for a PGA. Be sure to read my column, my hardcore core, which are GPP cores that I use, Zach's Daily Spin, all the other articles on the website. Like I mentioned before, we do have a European event, so let's just touch on that briefly, Zach. We do have a lot of that information on the site. Just a quick overview, the South African Open at Glendower Golf Club, obviously in South Africa, 7,594 yards. It's a par 72. Pretty decent field. Obviously, Rory makes that field look a lot stronger. It's in the town of, how do you say it, Zachary? Yerkalini?
Yeah, I'm not going to take a shot at that one.
All right. Who are you liking? Who stands out to you when you look at the pricing from the European side?
Well, you definitely have to consider Rory at the top. He's tough to ignore in a field like this because it's primarily you get that handful of stud South Africans that you have to worry about at the top, and then all of a sudden you've got Rory who shows up at an event like this, and I think you got to be on Rory this week. It's European too, so the strategy also changes over there. With PGA, I'm usually pretty comfortable going through and saying, all right, let's have a balanced lineup this week. These 6 guys have a pretty good shot making the cut. On the European Tour, I'm never like that. Right. I'm looking for 2 or 3 studs that I can put onto both cash game or GPP. And with cash, a lot of times 4 of 6 is good. You're going to have craziness in terms of guys blowing the cut, good players and bad players. It gets a little crazy, can get a little bit frustrating. So my philosophy, if I like Rory, is to start with Rory. A guy I really would have liked, but who's not playing this week, Charles Schwartzel. He has been battling with a knee injury, I read earlier today, which is unfortunate because he had a really good track record here. So I like kind of starting my lineup with the South Africans. Okay. I mean, that's pretty basic. Is there anybody outside of Rory at the top that you're looking at? So
does that mean you like Christian Buzenhout?
Oh, boy. So he's got a pretty good record over the last 2 seasons. He's obviously done really well. I don't think I've heard of him on any other event throughout the.
Well, then you weren't watching the Sunfish River Challenge.
I must have missed that one. I'm assuming this guy is just a stud on the Sunshine Tour the rest of the year.
You are correct, sir.
Okay. So,
So look out for him at 8,100. I doubt too many people will be on him unless they just are strictly looking at.
I mean, Brandon Stone is the defending champion, and he's been tremendous. He's been good here. He's on a pretty nice run.
I like Thomas Dietrich at 7,600. He's a young guy who should have a pretty good year this year.
And then we've been big on a couple of the other guys that are up here. Jaco van Ziel has got a pretty good course history. He's played pretty well. He's usually just a cut maker, but he's one of the better players in the field. Thomas Aiken is here this week. He looked great in the fall. We got to watch him play in the Ryder Cup. He looked very good. So I think he's in line. He's a guy that you talked about in your Crystal Ball article. So I think he's probably in line to have a really big year. So those are all guys that are up there at the top.
Jordan L. Smith I also like as you drop down into the 7s. That's don't mistake him for Jordan M. Smith or H. Smith. Okay. It's Jordan L. Smith. He's coming off a good year on the Challenger Tour. He had a lot of the top finishes, so he's a guy you could take a peek into in that 7K range. I'll also do a hardcore core for the European Tour and tell you who I'm playing in my core for European events as well.
I would be a little bit light with Euro this week, just given the fact that the field is as soft.
Well, the contests are so small, you could max enter and still play light.
That is true. They're really the European contests. They're really not doing much to pump those up at this point, which is a little bit disappointing. So,
thanks for joining us. As always, you can reach out to us through email at info@fantasygolfinsider.com. Send us a tweet @fantasygolfers is our handle. Jason and Zach both do periscopes during the week. Jason's is on Tuesday night, Zach's is Wednesday night. So check them out on there with your last minute lineup questions. Otherwise, for this week in the Sony Open, good luck to all of you, and we'll talk to you next week.
Good luck.